Hi, I'm Bao Tranchi, and I'm a costume and fashion designer. I live in Los Angeles. I have two beautiful girls, Sadie and Story. My life actually began in Vietnam, and from the moment I was born, it was shaped by the Vietnam War. You know, everyone's born a different lot, and mine started at the aftermath of the Vietnam War, and that completely has shaped my life. And just the tenacity and that just not taking anything for granted. We made it to 3 different refugee camps before we were finally sponsored. The final one was in Singapore, and we were sponsored by a Methodist church in LA, in Culver City. Actually, we were offered Australia, France, and LA, and my dad picked LA because, you know, America is the land of dreams, right? We ended up in Granada Hills, which is a suburb in the San Fernando Valley north of LA. So I think I was one of only 2 Asian kids in the school. You always knew you were the other, you know, and so, you know, growing up, I always watched my parents get ridiculed. Would be at the supermarket, and it's like, I don't understand you, just people speaking down and stuff, and to my mom and dad. And so, you know, I'm sure my older brother and sisters, you know, just facing that trauma. I see old pictures of it, and it's amazing. It'll be just like one little tiny TV, and just a bunch of us all around. It really shapes you when your life is at the starting over part of your parents. You know, like there was nothing, and you know, my father always, to this day, he still talks about how he's always felt so bad because like the 4 there's 9 kids, but the 4 youngest kids happened during after the Vietnam War and everything, and so we never had the wealth of the older kids, and then we started in such poverty. But that really shapes you, you know, and I always kind of knew, I guess, not my personal debt to my parents, but just if they are gonna risk everything for us to have a better life and pursue our dreams, then God damn it, we better pursue our dreams. So I always knew I was the girl in high school who was making all her own dresses. You know, prom, homecoming, all of that. I'm making all my own. My mom's showing me how to make clothes. Like, so for a while, my mom was making clothes for me that I would think of, and then she started teaching me, and so I always just knew. And so while I was in high school, I researched what was the best fashion school. And, you know, I'm in LA, and I was just like, okay, it's Otis. So I want to go to Otis. And it felt like such a pipe dream. And, you know, my oldest brother, you know, albeit bless his heart, was like, what are you talking about? You need to just get a minimum wage job and just start supporting the family. You know, there's, I don't want to say an immigrant mentality, but it's kind of like, you know, you keep your head down and you follow the rules. We suffered so much. Dreams are almost for the next generation. Like, if I have kids, I can grant them, you know, the hopes and dreams. But our siblings, our generation, well, you know, this was our lot, and we're the ones who are going to have to just be solid and build it for the next, right? And so it wasn't supported, and he was just like, you're going to dishonor mom and dad if you go to basically, I mean, who becomes a fashion designer, right? I thrive in obsession, and I think that's one of my biggest strengths as a designer, is that I love just diving deep. It's not just about like surface design, it's about psychological design, right? Like, you're designing from the inside out. Everybody is dressed the way they are because of who they are on the inside and what they're feeling that day. And you know, and you don't even realize you're dressed the way you are, possibly because of carryover from your parents. You know, this happened or this happened. And I love that. The backstory is so beautiful, right? And so that obsession is what drives me, and research. I love that so much. I'm such a consummate student of humans. I mean, like sociology, like people, like the mind, why people do what they do. Like, all of that it's my joy. so we shot in Thailand, and so my whole crew was Thai. Discovering too that the uniformity of uniforms in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and that's because of shortages, because of this, and so they were actually having different tailor shops make costumes. So there's variations of different camouflages that they had, different things were being, cotton fabrics were being made, dye houses were different, and so there's a slight variation. So I love that. So like we chose like 3 different sort of cottons, so that there's slight variations on camera. So it's not, and it's so subtle, but you kind of see it, and it's like real life. Like everyone's aging, everyone's being enlisted at a different time. Someone might have been serving since 1962 and they're wearing the same thing, and someone might be new and they just enlisted yesterday. So their suit should look a little bit more, like new. Like just those little details are so important, and you can feel it on the camera. So what was really important for me was really recreating 1967 Saigon proper. I feel like it hasn't been properly represented in Hollywood movies. They always kind of just, like I said, everyone's either a prostitute or a peasant, and it's just easier. They're tropes, and it's funnier to see on camera, right? But the reality of it was like 1967 Saigon, like, it was the financial epicenter of the entire country. It still is. And it was sophistication, it was beauty, like women, fashionable, the hair, the tiny waist, and they wore these conical bras. Like, people don't even know that because it hasn't been properly represented on camera. And I remember presenting it to Pete. I was just like, I want to show this. I want to show that, like when he leaves Inwood, New York, and he lands in Saigon, I want it to be like very visceral. Like you feel it. You're like, oh my God, like I didn't know that Saigon was this bustling city, And I've had people to this day who have. I remember 5 years ago, I was in Vietnam. I had a friend visit me, and she's from LA, and she's just like, oh my God, I thought Saigon was just going to be rice paddy field. And I guess sometimes I think maybe it's just easier for people to imagine a place that their country is in a war with as just being an environment, let's say rice paddy fields or mountains or desert or whatever, because then you don't feel the guilt of bombing it out, right? And so people don't like to imagine that Saigon was this thriving cosmopolitan city, like beautiful. And so I wanted to represent it. And we had a harbor scene, and we had the Saigon scene where he arrives, and Chicky arrives the day before Tet. Tet is the biggest holiday in all of Vietnam. Like, if you've been there, it is like Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Halloween, all rolled into one. It's like people will celebrate for over a month, right? And I told people, it'd be like, if you're shooting a Christmas movie in New York City and it doesn't have Christmas decorations everywhere, then you did not do your job right. Like, it should feel that way. And people dress up, people are festive, people are out buying, flowers, fortunes, desserts, food, like they're cleaning up, they're preparing for, the new year. And so I wanted it to feel like that, like people are dressed in their best. I mean, of course, you have to mix in the reality of not everybody was wealthy, So we had the peasants, we had, the average people, we had people who were middle class, and you have to have that range and to have the diversity to make it look real. When you're in the eye of the storm, you don't even realize there's a storm going on until it calms down. You're like, oh my God, we did that. But yeah, we did it, and we created a whole world